Hey, how's it going, everyone? And welcome back to Into the Westworld. This is our Westworld recap show where we break down the latest episodes of HBO's hit series. You guessed it, Westworld. I am your host, Griffin, as always, and I'm joined by two amazing guests, both of which you've seen on this show before if you're a regular. And if you haven't watched this recap show before, well, hello, nice to see you joining us. But anyways, we're going to start with Miss Gretchen Smale, who is a staff writer over at Bustle Gressel. I called you Gressel, which is the combination of Gretchen and Bustle. So anyways, how are you doing?
Thank you for having me. I am very good.
Good. Well, I'm glad you're doing well. Did you? Well, actually, before we get into your thoughts on the episode, let's introduce our third guest, which is Mr. Zach Pope. Zap.
Dude, what is up with you today, man?
It's really all over the place.
You're combining names, the websites. It's all good, man.
It's a nightmare. It's
really
one of those days. How are you doing?
It's one of those days.
I know.
I'm doing good, man. I'm doing good. I like this episode, so I'm excited to talk about it.
Good. Yeah, I'm excited to talk about it as well. Guys, we are doing this live, so if you have thoughts and opinions that you want us to talk about, feel free to chime off in the chat here, and we'll try and get to it as we can, as we kind of go throughout the course of this recap show. But basically, the way this works is we kind of give our overall thoughts and impressions on the episodes, and then we kind of dive into the episode bit by bit, and we break it down by character arcs. So basically, we'll start off going around the table here. So Zach, let's start with you. What were your opinions on tonight's episode, the penultimate episode, I guess, which is called Passing Pawn or something like that?
Past Pawn, man.
Past Pawn,
and
yeah.
I thought that title is just perfect for what this episode had going for it. Yes, it's a heavy exposition episode. It feels very much first season of Westworld, but I loved everything it kind of set up, and it really diverted my expectations for what I think is going to happen next week. A lot of the things that I was expecting to happen in the finale happened in this week's episode. So I'm curious to see how it kind of turns out, but I love that we finally got to find out a little bit more of Caleb, and I think it kind of just ties everything into the season all together. Even the small things, which I really loved. I didn't expect for that app to come back into play, and it did. And I was like, man, this is great.
Yeah, for sure. I did like how they kind of like tied the app back into it. But yeah, Gretchen, what did you think of tonight's episode?
I had opposite feelings of Zach. I thought it was clunky from an exposition standpoint. And I did love, I love the team up of Maeve, Clementine, and Tao Okamoto's character. But overall, I felt like it was too much to shove in the second to last episode, and it just made me feel like this whole season could have been handled, I think, a little more efficiently or clearer, or or in a more impactful way.
Yeah, well, and I wonder how much of that really is because it was 8 episodes instead of 10. Maybe I think this episode maybe showcased why they could have benefited from an extra 2 episodes.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Where it feels like a lot, and that's the thing, the whole season in general, I feel like the pacing has been pretty good for it. But this is the first episode, I will admit to that yeah, it does feel like a lot of stuff happened in one episode, and maybe you could have split 2 different things in this whole entire realm. And honestly, Bernard's really getting the nothing. I mean, really,
he's getting the shaft of the season. Yeah,
straight up, sure. This season started out great with him, and I'm like, the fuck are you doing with him?
Right.
Yeah. So. In the way they're kind of tying him into the larger plot at hand almost just feels weird. It's like he's 5 steps behind of what's going on, and it's gotten to the point where it's irritating, even if it's only to link up with William,
Yeah, totally.
Right. Yeah, for sure. So let's go into this thing. Obviously, we'll start with the opening here, which is it Musashi? Is that his name?
Yeah.
The guy?
Yes.
Yeah. So it basically, we're following Musashi, which we know now is not Musashi, and that is Dolores. So basically, he comes to he's in this restaurant or whatever, and Hale gives him a call, which is interesting because this is the only instance that we see Hale in this episode. In fact, I'll say this: the opening to this episode almost just it feels inconsequential to the rest of everything that's going on, and so it was just a really bizarre.
It opens up very fast, and it feels like something that's maybe should have happened. Again, that feels like it could have been its whole entire own episode. Which again,
right?
I said, holy fuck, to this episode's opening. especially once they show Clementine and what's the girl's name? The other one.
Her name is Hanario.
And I was really excited to see that she came back because I know some people were expecting Teddy or something, but no, that kind of fits more that she's in there and they kill, the other Dolores but it never went anywhere else. And
it was really weird.
Is Charlotte even on Dolores' side anymore? It doesn't seem like it.
Well, that's the thing is like this thing episodes and Hale calls Musashi and then she's basically like, well, Dolores is just playing us. We're all gonna die, which when we get to the end of this episode, we find out is kind of true, right? Like she's basically just wants everyone to die. But it is interesting because it's like the events of what happened in last week's episode have kind of shifted Hale's perspective on things in a weird way. I didn't think she was going to turn against Dolores like this, but yeah, basically the whole opening, the opening to the show is like Clementine just killing Musashi, and then it cuts to the open credits. But yeah, Gretchen, what did you think of this opening? And then what's going on with Hale? Like, how is she going to play into this whole thing?
I loved the opening, and I honestly wish, like you were saying, Zach, that was the whole episode. That was the only part of the episode that I felt like I was really there for. And then to see later that that Clementine and Hanario weren't even in like that final battle with Dolores just felt like a disappointment. Yeah. Like, why would you even introduce them if they weren't going to factor in like a 3-on-1 battle? But I did like the twist of Charlotte working with Maeve because you did see that set up. Like, I thought it was the perfect continuation of that episode. That was I
feel like I had missed something, to be honest. Like when it started, I was like, did I miss, like, did it skip ahead or something? Like,
it felt a little bit, yeah.
Yeah, I thought I had accidentally missed an entire episode. But yeah, it starts really quickly, but I do like the idea that like she's basically become separate from Dolores, which I think we talked about in an earlier episode. And I didn't like that she was still Dolores, but now that she's basically become like this weird blend of Charlotte and Dolores and then someone else entirely, I like that. But I also think it's just thrown in at the end, and ultimately it's not going to be that important. Like, I think she is going to fight in the final battle, but I don't know if she's going to make it out.
Yeah, I almost feel like Hale's arc for this season is basically wrapped up, and then it's just going to be continued in the next season, and she's going to kind of be that like rogue character that'll I guess be like coming in and causing conflict with like Dolores and stuff. Like I really don't know what to make of her at this point. It was just such a I agree with both of you. It's like I felt like I was missing something when this episode started. So yeah, I completely agree with that. But basically from there, we get the opening, and then we go into Caleb's story, which is just a bunch of flashbacks. We find out that like, oh, he was in the military, a bunch of stuff happened that we'll get to in a little bit later on. And then Dolores and Caleb go to Mexico, which is I forget the specific spot, but the spot they're in is the area that is modeled after, or I'm sorry, that Westworld modeled itself after. So they go there, and then Dolores is like talking about, raging some kind of revolution or whatnot. And like Caleb's like, okay, what are we really doing here? It's like, you've taken me this far. I still have no idea what we're doing, but like, I believe in you kind of, but I'm still confused. And so basically she wants to find a new place for her kind to be free is essentially what she says. And then they go to this facility that has a significant relation to Caleb. And then basically Dolores is using Caleb as her just giant master plan, which is something that we find out as a pawn. Well, I mean, he's been used by a pawn by everyone, by like Sirach, his own people and whatnot. So yeah, well, I guess we can kind of like talk about everything that kind of happens in here. Starting with you, Gretchen. The way that Dolores is using Caleb, is that sort of in line with where you thought they were going to go, or is it kind of irritating you?
Well, I said like on the first episode that I thought they were going to teach each other about the importance of humanity, and that was completely wrong. She's not using him as a way to like realize humans are worth saving. She's just using him, and I think that line that I think Bernard said, where he was saying, "Oh, she's like dangling the prospect of him saving humanity in front of him, but in reality, she's just using him to destroy humanity. He just doesn't realize it. I think that's a really accurate description of what's going on. She very obviously knew that he was one of those outliers, and she kept it from him. At this point, I don't understand why why he's still following her, knowing that one, she's a host. Like, I didn't even know that she revealed to him that she was a host. I felt like that was just thrown in, and he was chill with it. And then on top of that, I don't get why he continues to follow her after finding out that she clearly knew that he was an outlier.
I think it's just a matter of, it's just like, that's sort of been his life. He's always followed someone and something who apparently is telling him what to do, and hoping that that's the right thing to do, as we kind of figure out later on in this episode. So it's like, he's always been a follower, and now like Dolores is asking him to be a leader. And after she's shown him everything, which we'll get into in a little bit, he's just like filled with rage and going to, I guess, lead a revolution, if you will. So like, it is kind of puzzling why he would continue to just like let himself be strung along like this. But at the same time, it is, like, for me at least, it is kind of in line with his character, you know?
Yeah. And just throwing in my kind of thing for that, so like kind of going, why does he follow her? And I think it's because I feel like he looks at her as an outsider, just like how he is as well. And just kind of how Griffin put it, is like, he's always followed people. He's never been the leader type. And I think Dolores knowing everything, I mean, he obviously knows that like, she's an outlier in this, that she knew that he was an outlier in this situation, but I don't think he understands that, like, no, this is her pawn. Like, this is her whole plan. Like, she knows, like, I'm probably going to die, but he will finish it all. And that's the crazy thing in this whole, I will say though, I love how they do tie in everything, because we see those flashbacks with Sirach making this machine, and we're like, okay, how's this going to tie back in? And it obviously does. And it's just small little subtle things that they tie in there to where like you're watching it and you're like, oh, I know what that thing is. I understand. Yeah. Where instead of giving you more exposition in this entire episode to kind of tell you, hey, this is what this machine is, this is what it does, blah, 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 and etc.
Yeah, I want to bring up something that someone in the chat said. I'm going to see if I can pull it up here. So Pegleg says, they tried to cram too much in this episode. They could have been telling us more about Caleb all along. We've seen the same flashbacks 100 times. I could not agree more with that. And in fact, that's something that Sharonda has been saying all along, really, is that they haven't been giving us enough Caleb. They took too long. It took too long. They should have been sprinkling it in throughout the entire episode instead of just boom, having this massive episode. Or you have the flash part, which is like what he thinks to be true, have that episode, and then have the truth be revealed in this episode that, oh, it was all a lie. We were manipulating you and manipulating your personality this whole time. I feel like either of those two options would have been the better way to go about this. You know?
And it seems like they did this even last season with the Indian guy. It was like the pendulum episode. He was the one right before it or something like that.
No, he was a couple back, I think, but I agree with you.
It was weird. Yeah, it was a weird choice. It's like, what you think that could play, because you could have taken some aspects of this, put it a little bit earlier into the season, and then gave the giant reveal that no, that was a lie. And it still, I mean, I still got the Westworld twist in it, you know, when it happened, but it didn't feel like, and this is coming from someone who really liked the episode. It didn't feel as satisfying as I wanted to. Like out of every episode, this is probably my second least favorite of them all, personally. But, you know, that I think when it comes down to, you know, Gretchen says it is clunky. It does feel clunky. I mean, it does feel this is a very rushed episode. This feels that this should have been a episode 7 and an episode 8 and then gone into a 9 or a 10. And this is the first episode that I do feel that, yes, there was way too much where you probably could have gone back a couple weeks and been like, okay, this episode, you could have pushed it in there. You know, they had a lot of time to do it, I feel like, and they could have maybe intersected a different thing in there. Because to be honest, we probably knew more about Sirach than we knew about Caleb by the time we actually found it out. So,
yeah, it's just hard to, like, I like Caleb because I like Aaron Paul, but in terms of the character, he's just like, there's something about, he feels inconsequential almost. Like, it's hard to feel super attached to him because I just don't know him that much as a person. And yeah, it was an interesting twist, but like comparing it to like the twist that William was the Man in Black, like it's not nearly the
it's not the
same.
same.
Especially when like there were also theories that maybe he was a clone or he was a host. Like this just
We're still trying to figure that out.
You still believe it's possible?
No, I don't even. I think this episode eliminated all possibilities of that being like a thing.
Yeah, but like
I don't know. It said he was deceased. Do we know? I mean, you know what I mean? We don't know, and that's I think what was it at the end of season 2 when it gave that whole post-credit sequence. They've even said that I think they said that won't even be a thing till like the last season or something like that when they interviewed them, and it's just come on.
Yeah. Before we go on here, Daniel Young says something interesting that I also agree with, which we haven't really gotten to in terms of this, but basically Dolores and Caleb go into this facility and they find basically the prototype for Rehoboam, which is Solomon, which we find out is made sort of in the image of Sirach's brother, whereas like Rehoboam was made in the image of Sirach because Solomon, to like Dolores basically says, it's a schizophrenic AI basically, but it knows it basically plotted a chart for everyone like too much, like it kind of knew a little too much of everything in terms of the how they wanted to chart everyone's path. So but basically Daniel says the part where Dolores said to Solomon, no wonder they prevented you to escape. They didn't explain the tech. Then we only understood what it does when Dolores slams the engage button. So yeah, that's another sort of example of them sort of just like haphazardly going through the episode and like being limited by time, which is really weird because for an episode that had so much crammed into it, it's only 59 minutes. I would have expected it to be longer, like like
at least 20 minutes longer, like a 20 minutes, something like that. And they have it. It's not like that's a weird thing. They've done it before in their episodes. They've done it before in other HBO shows. So, and I will say, I was actually confused. Like when she clicked the button, I was like, okay. I was actually wait. So is it only them two that got hurt by that? Like does Stubbs and Bernard not get hurt? But like that's what I was confused on. I'm like,
yeah.
Okay, so what's going on with that? Like that's the one thing I was actually confused on by this whole episode.
Yeah, I agree. I was confused by a lot of things, but that was one of several.
No, for sure. Like the rules of the world and the tech and stuff. But
yeah.
But yeah, so
I was half waiting for Bernard and Stubbs to fall over.
Right, exactly.
And to be honest, I'm waiting for the beginning of next episode for them to fall over, and that's how they get out of the Man in Black shooting them.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, basically they find this facility where Solomon is, and like Dolores makes a comment of, this is reminiscent to the way that Delos treated us in the park, and I actually the one thing I did like about this episode was like the parallels they made from like the real world and that Sirach has set up to Westworld. So it's like we've left the park, but like the world we're living in is a larger, more like fucked up version of that park. Yeah. So I like that from a metaphorical standpoint. I'm happy they're not going literal with it, which was something that I was afraid of in earlier episodes. So
I think they're handling that the best they possibly can, to be honest. I think that's probably the best part of this whole season is like the viewpoint of our world compared to Westworld.
Yeah, I agree. So from there, we find out that Caleb was one of the first to receive this because of his time in the war and everything. He was basically discharged, and he was the first to receive a new treatment, and he was the only one that it worked for, supposedly. He was like the 1 out of 10 people that they tested it on. So basically what this whole thing amounts to was they sent outliers that couldn't get better to a holding cell in hibernation, like the hosts, and that was like after. Sorry, I think I misread something here, but they would send the people who they thought were outliers to get reconditioning, and what the reconditioning was basically the AR therapy that we saw
last week.
That we saw William going through. So what happens is they show us Caleb's backstory. They show us him getting deployed to Russia, fighting with this group to take out this insurgency, which actually happened. That was true. And then they tell him through this, reconditioning that, they were attacked and they basically sent them to track down the leader of that organization to take revenge on them killing his troop. And so he kills the leader, and the insurgents that were trying to get the leader out basically kill his friend Francis.
Yep. Played by Kid Cudi, just so everyone knows.
Right. Yeah, that was.
To be honest, I didn't know he was played by him until this episode.
Really? Oh,
yeah. Because I was like, oh shit, that's Kid Cudi. We actually get speaking lines from this guy now.
Yeah, that's right. Because I remember in the first episode, it was his. They used his voice. So, but yeah. But basically, so that whole thing happens, and then we're revealed what actually happened which was everything that happened in the war happened, but they were honorably discharged. And then basically this reconditioning and whatnot, and paired with drugs, scrambled their memories so that they couldn't piece everything together. And they sent these outliers out on missions to kill other agitators, and collect other outliers, which I found to be like really just like kind of disturbing. And like you automatically end up feeling like more for Caleb in this moment. But Gretchen, let me go to you first. What did you think of like how they sort of did the reveal of Caleb's true backstory? Did you like any of this? Is this where it kind of started to lose you a little bit, or
I still think it should have gotten its own entire episode. And I think maybe this should have been happening. Like, I think we said it was Sharonda in the episode where he was tripping on all the drugs and hopping through the genres.
Mm-hmm. That would have been a good one. Yeah,
it would have been more suited there.
Yeah.
Again, I think the way it was presented to us was fine. I think the twist itself was a little bit of a letdown. And for me, I feel like it opened up a lot of questions that I don't know that the season is going to answer. Like, is everyone using the Rico app an outlier? Like, does that mean Ash and Giggles, who is Marshawn Lynch's character?
Yeah.
Like, that was his name from the last episode we talked about it.
I love it.
Like, are they outliers? And is that why they have the app? Can it be accessed by anyone? For me, it was like this emotional gut punch you're supposed to feel, but then you get all this information that kind of loses you in the process. And then as a result, I felt kind of like distance from Caleb by the end because it was just too much.
Yeah, it was, that's a good point. It was a little bit of overload for sure. And at least for me, I thought the emotional, like, it wasn't a gut punch, but it worked. The problem was it was telegraphed, right? Like we knew that something like this was going to happen, that like he had been reprogrammed, whether it was literally or like metaphorically. So
yeah.
That was the biggest issue for me with this whole reveal. But yeah, Zach, what is your take on this?
I mean, I agree with what Gretchen's saying. Even though I like the episode, I mean, the more that, like, especially we talk about it, the more I start to kind of pinpoint and nitpick this episode a little bit more.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Because the thing is I love Aaron Paul and I love Caleb. I love the introduction to him. I love everything about it. And I love this twist. I love this freaking twist of saying, no, you've been a pawn to everyone's game, because we've already kind of felt that when we were like, okay, maybe Dolores sees that in him and she felt like the pawn too, so she's bringing him along. No, she knew all along that she's
using him. Yeah.
And he doesn't know that. But I mean, I'd even said, I was thinking after this episode ended, I thought maybe Caleb dies next week. Well, that's not a thing. I was looking up some stuff. Apparently he's excited about season 4. So, as we're talking, so thanks, Aaron Paul. That kind of, I mean, I could be wrong. You know what I mean? He could die in some way, come back as a host. I mean, no one really dies in Westworld. That's just the truth.
Even Lee Sizemore doesn't die.
Yeah, but you know what's funny? I'll be honest. I was waiting for Dolores to die in this. I really thought this was going to be it for her. At least that version of her. I thought at least that version of her that's it. Especially once her arm got blown off, I'm like, that's it, man. That's game over. But it's again, it's curious. I told you this. I'm like, season 6, that's a lot. It feels like this was building up to the finale of whatever they have going on. I'm just like, where do you go in a season 4? And I feel like next week's episode is going to really place down where that's going.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I've seen a few people like compare this to Game of Thrones season 8. I don't think that's the case. I think that's a very big exaggeration. Also, considering the fact that the show isn't over, they could still manage to wrap everything up.
Yeah.
what it really comes down to is like what is the finale? Does the finale just like incite a new like conflict in the real world that will then like be explored in the fourth season? It's just I have a hard time seeing where they're going with the show ultimately, and it's not,
it's
not
funny.
necessarily a bad thing, but
I feel like the finale is not gonna feel. I mean, most finales do feel satisfying at some nature, but I feel like it's gonna be a big tease. I feel like it's gonna be a giant tease for season 4.
Yeah.
And I think, to be honest, I think that's why they announced season 4 after last week's episode, which did really good. And I think, okay, they're like, this is probably gonna be the one that's gonna get a little bit of a hit. Let's announce season 4 so people can at least get excited right now and know that, okay, maybe if they don't love this episode, there's still more to come.
Yeah, for sure.
So,
Gretchen, what do you think about that?
I agree with that. This whole season just feels like a setup for a future season where things actually happen. Like
I guess that's true.
like I do like some of the new characters that were introduced. I like that you see like the continuing fight between Maeve and Dolores, but it just, in terms of a season all on its own, it just doesn't feel like a ton is happening. It just feels like set up for something else. So I don't know if that means she's not going to succeed against Sirach, or she is, and then it's just set up for an entirely new world. I'm not really sure, but it just feels like in between for sure.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. Daniel also chimes off in the comments. He says, "What do you guys think about Dolores in this episode? She looks like she's doing her own thing now." We talked a little bit about that at the top of the episode. I think we're all kind of in agreement that she's kind of like she's going rogue, and like her arc is going to be separate from what everyone else is going in. But she'll like definitely come in and probably try to like incite some sort of conflict between them.
She's gonna be the Terminator next season. She's freaking Terminator. You know what I mean?
I do actually like her. I think it was cool.
I love her.
Basically, she's become like a Maeve, but if Maeve like lost her daughter in front of her, so she's just become this like, vengeful figure who's completely against Dolores, and I honestly love it because I don't like Dolores that much. So
I totally agree. Let me.
Dolores is a character not to cheer for, and that's why I've always loved Bernard, because you're always cheering for him. And they've just given him the shaft this season that you just like, like where are we going with
character? And he just gets beat up for half the season, and the other half he's just blowing in the wind with stuff.
Yeah. He started so strong this season.
I know.
Yeah.
Like the first 2-3 episodes, he was so good, and it's just like literally just straight line. Like there's just a straight line for Bernard's character. And it's very weird. I mean, maybe if they got 2 more episodes, it would have been more interesting. There's no way that Nolan and Joy did not want more episodes. There's no way. That had to have been an HBO thing, I feel like.
Yeah, probably. And then also like I think the budget definitely took a bump in this season too. It looks incredible.
Yeah, honestly, if you want some stuff from Bernard, follow Jeffrey Wright on Twitter each time Westworld's going on. He posts some funny shit. He posts some funny shit throughout the episode.
Yeah, I mean he's the greatest. I do want to throw something at you both real quick. Gretchen, we'll start with you. Do you feel like they've sort of betrayed Maeve's character a little bit? Because right now she's like a puppet of Sirach. Obviously, we understand she's doing it for her daughter.
Yeah,
but it still feels like she would have found a way out of it, or she'd come to her senses and like turn on Sirach. People are saying, I saw some guy in the chat here say that, maybe Sirach is literally controlling her. He has a literal stranglehold over her. Like, what do you think's going on there?
I don't know what's going on, but I do agree that it feels like the fight between Dolores and Maeve at this point feels really superficial. Like it does. It's not entirely clear to me why they're still fighting. It seems like the characters themselves don't know. As far as I understand it, Maeve's plan was to somehow work with Sirach, get her daughter back, and then kill Sirach. But that doesn't make sense to me. I don't get why she doesn't try to work with Dolores. I know he has a kill switch, so maybe that's one thing she's worried about. But I mean, her daughter is like in a place Sirach can't touch, as far as I know. So I don't get it. And I agree that it feels a little poorly built up.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially when you look at her from like where she was at the beginning of the season. It was like, oh yes, it's like it's going to be this ideological clashing of ideas where it's like now it just feels like they're clashing because Sirach has like a stranglehold over her.
Well, yeah,
I
and
don't
also
feel like
that
she'll be
Dolores
going after.
killed Hector. Like that.
Oh right, yeah. Sorry, that's. I mean, yeah, that's
Lord.
definitely.
Yeah.
She even
poor,
said it.
Poor
in
Hector.
This. You know what I mean? She even said it in this. I'm gonna tear your head off.
Yeah.
Because and I just I don't know. Westworld's hard to judge each week because like you can spew out how you feel about everything, and then the next week can be like, oh, okay, I kind of get it. I kind of like where they're going. So it's hard. Like I can nitpick, and then next week something happens, and I'm like, okay, I kind of appreciate what they did this episode to set up that. I need to see where they're going, and I think that's something that I've always liked about Westworld. Also, is that I just don't know what's happening each week, and maybe that's part of the reason I don't watch the previews, so I literally don't know what the hell is happening.
The previews don't help. They show you just a bunch of images, and they're like, well, there you go.
I saw someone said Bernard had more personality in the commercials.
That's fair for this episode. Yeah, I think like if I had to compare it to something in Game of Thrones, I wouldn't say season 8. I would say this whole season kind of reminds me of when Sansa and Arya finally meet up, and they are actually planning together to kill Littlefinger, but the audience isn't in on that until like the final episode. And it's like, surprise, there's this big twist. And that's how I feel like this season is. I'm not entirely clear what Maeve's plan is, what Dolores, or Sirach, or Caleb's plans are, and their motivations are a little hazy to me. And that, to me, makes this season just not as compelling to watch because I don't know what anyone's doing. I don't know why they're doing it. I don't know.
Yeah. No, for sure. Jay here in the chat says Dolores has what she wants, and Dolores saved them from being destroyed by Sirach. And I think Dolores knows it. That's why she didn't do much to try and convince Maeve, which there's definitely like a hesitation from Dolores' side. Like she's just doing it to buy time, essentially. She doesn't really want to fight her. Whereas like Maeve is like fully out for blood. So like I
love Dolores' little sniper rifle. Like that.
Oh yeah,
that was really cool. I always like the fact they play around in. And I like how she set it up and then kind of came around and just very smart. I mean, this season, and I will claim this, why we say, oh yeah, Bernard got the shot. This season's been like all about the females. Like they've just killed it. Each and every episode, like the performances are always top tier, whether it's Tessa, Fanny Newton, Rachel Evan Woods, just awesome. Each and every time they're always on screen, just killing it.
Yeah, for sure. Well, let's talk about that fight though. Like, other than like the fact that it felt a little superficial, did you guys enjoy that for the most part?
I enjoyed it.
Yeah, you dug it.
Yeah, I dug it. I wish the choreograph. I don't think it's the choreograph. I think it's the way they shot it. Like I thought, oh yeah, we're finally get some good action sequences from Westworld, but I thought the one with Tessa was filmed a little bit better, to be honest.
Yeah.
Where this one felt like, and even last season with a lot of the sword fighting stuff looked really good, and this one felt like, I don't know who directed this one necessarily, but I didn't feel like they shot it right. But I mean, it's still good. It's still good. I'm just a little bit like, I expect my action to be a little bit better, to be honest.
For sure. Yeah, Gretchen, did you like the fights? Yeah.
Yeah, it was fun to see them fight, but I kind of agree with how it was shot in terms of like they were really trying to use the barn, the little shanty thing as like part of the fight, but it was distracting to me because they had they had a drone, they had a helicopter. The drone was super accurate at the beginning, but then when they're fighting, all of a sudden it's like it's a stormtrooper aim, and then it's a helicopter. It can't shoot through that wall. Like more balls. So and it's like
if that helicopter's controlled by Sirach or like who his men.
I don't know who.
I think what it was was like Maeve was just like controlling it with her mind, like because we saw how she was able to get into the technology to speak to Dolores, you know. So I think that's kind of how I took it.
You know what? Like the way we talk about this now, them fighting, you know, it's been building up, and it just happened.
It exactly. It just felt like it happened. Yeah.
From the commercials, do you remember? It looked like different lighting when they were fighting, or like when it was building up in the commercials. So I'm wondering if there's still one more big thing to happen between them next week.
Yes, in the preview, it did show that they
Okay.
fight at night again, and she still has her sword again, and it seems like they're in front of Insight. I'm assuming.
That's
what it looked like. Yeah,
that's what I'm hoping is that next week feels like the big oomph and push for it. But I just hope this season ends satisfying while still leaving open enough for next season. Where I felt like season 2 for me ended and I felt satisfied, but I'm excited to see where they take it with Dolores and all that sorts of stuff that they left open. So it's just I'm hoping the season does it.
Yeah, no, for sure. All right, any final comments on the Dolores, Caleb, Maeve whole arc that was going on there? Because next we'll move into William, Stubbs, and Bernard. But before we do that, any final comments on that? Gretchen, we'll start with you.
Oh, I hope that Maeve and Dolores actually team up by the end of the season. I don't know if I want to see another season of them fighting. I'm kind of tired of it. It doesn't make much sense to me. I think they would be, and even in the behind the scenes after show thing, Evan and Tandy were both saying, "Oh, we had been hoping that we were going to team up." So like it was surprising to see we had a big fight scene coming up. So I think the actors want it. It seems like it makes sense from a storytelling perspective, and I just hope it happens.
Yeah, well, it's interesting that you say that because that's not the first time that the actors were disappointed with where their characters being taken. Because Ed Harris was also very vocal about him not liking what they're doing with the Man in Black, which we'll get to in a little bit later on. But yeah, Zach, any final thoughts on this portion of the episode?
I mean, you know what? Like, actors are always going to want something different. But I will say, I mean, these hosts should be working together at this point. And I feel like going into season 4, I mean, it's cool to have Caleb there. And if Caleb's maybe like the headstrong part of them that kind of makes some of humanity go, well, maybe we should have hosts. Should they have rights? I mean, that's something that they've explored but haven't dived deeply into yet. And I think that's the element that Westworld's actually kind of missing right now is that political element. I think the first season kind of had it. The second season tied a little bit into it, but this season hasn't had a lot of it. It's more about the parallels of Westworld to our world. So I think there's a lot of potential in there to follow through. I thought this was good though. I mean, really the best thing about this was really figuring out what's going on with Caleb. Even though if it was a little bit clunky, I was just happy to finally understand Caleb, and it's very tragic, like how he's just his whole life he's been a pawn. And it also opens up in the beginning, is that seriously his mom or not? Because
yeah, right. Because they completely planted, they stole his memories and his life from him. So yeah, I mean, that could very well just be someone that they handed to him as like a mother or whatnot.
Yeah.
I guess before we move away from this, where do you guys think? What do you think is going to happen to Caleb in the next episode? Like, obviously he's on the warpath. Obviously he's going to like try and go and start a revolution. But like when Bernard at the end of the episode says, "Oh, he's going to use." Or Dolores is going to use Caleb to wipe out everyone. What do you think he means by that? Gretchen, we'll start with you.
Oh God, I don't know. The show keeps throwing me off. I don't know. At this point, I don't see how else he could destroy humanity. Honestly, it seems like it's doing a great job of destroying itself.
Yeah.
Yes, like people, like you see, like in the background of several scenes in the other episodes, that people are committing suicide, they're rioting, killing each other. I mean, at this point, I feel like Dolores has already won. I think anything else he does is going to be just this really brutal thing on top of that. So.
What's he going to be, a terrorist, pretty much? Like go down the street with a gun and start shooting? Like, that's what I'm curious. What's the plan? What's this plan that this thing developed for him to go do?
Yeah, I think ultimately, and you get a little hint of this in the tease for next week, but I think ultimately Dolores is going to upload herself into like Rehoboam or something like that. Because I thought they were going to do that this episode, and when she like collapsed, I thought like she hit the button and her conscious was like uploaded into whatever. I have a feeling like something like that's going to happen. Like Dolores, she's the kind of character who wants power. Like that's what she's been about, because she's been so oppressed. She's like, well, I want to basically take revenge on being oppressed for so long by using these self-righteous tactics. But
and do you think there will still be a walking around Dolores and in that machine? If they were
I think it would be like she would just literally upload her consciousness into like the ether or whatever, and like that's just where she would be.
The internet.
Yeah, the internet. Yeah, for sure. Okay, all right, let's move on to the last section of the episode here, which is William, Bernard, and
nothing.
Stubbs.
Just a flat line.
Basically nothing, but there are some interesting tidbits that
I
kinda
will
happen
say
here.
one of my favorite things in this whole part, real fast, is Ed Harris. Man, he has the lines. His whole conversation with Stubbs, when he finds out Stubbs is a host, he goes, "Seriously, Ford, man, come on." Just great.
Yeah.
I love that whole section right there.
Yeah, it's just so funny because I know we keep going back to this, but this whole arc just feels really inconsequential. And like I'm not gonna lie, I do not like William's arc. Like in this, I get where Ed Harris is coming from. It's like, okay, so now he has a change of heart, and now he's just gonna kill all the hosts. Well, like, how is that different from like what his original kind of like ambition was? It's like initially he was doing it out of malice, and now he's doing it because he thinks it's the right thing to do, but he's still doing the same thing. So like nothing has really changed. It's just
I
really
thought how it started. I loved, and now this episode, I was just like,
they've really just done that character dirty. But yeah,
it seems like they needed to have something for Ed Harris to do. Like he's just like we have Ed Harris, we need to do something with him this season.
Yeah.
Or
for
like
sure.
personally for me, I think Ed Harris, I don't think he needed to be in this season, to be completely honest.
He doesn't. He's the definition of a character who's outlived his usefulness, and he had his big going out moment in season 2.
Yeah.
Like
and you could have even retired the character for maybe this season, maybe even season 4, bring him back for season 5.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
but
I guess
always try to do that with everyone in each season. If we're gonna kill this person, wait, we're gonna bring him back. We have something special for him to do.
Yeah,
like Stubbs. How many fucking times has Stubbs died?
I know. It's great. I mean Luke Hemsworth needs some work, I guess. But I guess when it comes to Ed Harris, it's like how are they even going to like tie this back to that epilogue that we saw at the end of season 2? Like that just that feels so far removed from everything that's going on now. I'd be surprised if it just never came up again, you know?
Yeah, it's just because in his mind, he said he's literally atoned for killing his daughter and for doing all the bad things he's done, and that his only crime left is to get rid of the hosts, and it just feels like such a self-defeating cycle. And it's like, what do we as audience members get out of watching that? It's just frustrating.
I know the character is just like tortured relentlessly, even when he thinks he's doing the right thing, and it's just like at the same time the cycle just keeps repeating itself, and it's not even done in an interesting way, like you said. Scampoli 25 in the chat says something really funny. They were like, can William not be a total bastard just once? The character deserves better writing. And yeah, I mean, listen, like it's really hard to change who a person is, especially when they're like, I guess Ed Harris's age, like an older person. So like I understand his unwillingness to, be a better person, but like just do something, kill him, like leave him locked up in purgatory or something. Like something like that would be way better.
You could have even left him in that facility, and that could have been it. I would have been satisfied with that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you don't really ever need to go. No, you're good. No, you're good. You're good.
It would have been perfect if he was left in that moment where he's just fighting with himself.
Yeah.
All versions of himself, because that's literally who he is as a character.
Yeah.
He hates himself, and that would have been another fitting end for that character. And it's like,
did they explain why Bernard and Stubbs had to go get him yet?
Yeah, so basically, to my knowledge, they're like Dolores, quote unquote, sent them there, even though they're just trying to track down Dolores, and they're still trying to piece together what she's doing. So they went there to try and find like I guess answers as to like what's going on and whatnot, which is where they find out the information about Caleb. But still,
why did they need him though? Like, why do you need him?
They just kind of stumbled upon him in the last episode. But so what they find out is that Dolores was using William's blood to find the location of that place in the desert for the real Dolores, I believe, or maybe it was Dolores. I don't even know. It's all Dolores at this point. But basically, she planted a virus inside of his blood in order to do that. now the question, I guess, kind of becomes is like, is she going to use his blood to create another copy of him? Because that's what she's been doing with everyone else that she's taken blood from, you know? So that's kind of like where I'm thinking, like maybe there's another, host version of William, but it's like, what does that accomplish at this point other than shocker, there's another William out there? Like, it doesn't do anything to further arcs or plots, at least at this point. So I don't know. And then like during that whole thing, we find out that he's an outlier, obviously. And through that, it's like, oh, they're turning their minds inside out so that they're less of a threat to society. If the therapy didn't work, they were declared either missing or deceased, which is why William is declared deceased in this. He's not actually dead. This isn't a host version. He is just declared deceased because the treatment did not work on him. And then through more conversations, we find out that William is the one that sold the data to Sirach, that basically the human data that he needed in order to reprogram humans through this treatment, which is what they were doing to the host. So everything's very poetic and whatnot. And then it ends with Bernard Stubbs and William kind of just like escaping, and William being like, I found my purpose. I'm going to kill the host. So it's just,
he's just Christopher Columbus, man. He's just Christopher Columbus.
Yeah, he's entirely up his own ass, honestly.
Like,
it really is. It's just kind of like insufferable at this point. But Gretchen, starting with you, any final thoughts on this whole section of the episode?
I just hope that Stubbs and Bernard end up having this amazing moment when they finally meet up with everyone. Like, I keep picturing, like, they finally have this big fight scene between, like, Dolores, Maeve, Clementine, Henario, Caleb, and, everyone. And they just, like, get their asses kicked, Like, I just picture them, like, they're just so far behind everyone else. And I'm like, don't hurt them.
I know.
Maybe one day.
Yeah, maybe one day. Zach, how about you? Any final thoughts in this section?
I mean, really, this is like the least interesting section of the whole entire episode. You could have dedicated more time to Caleb and all that stuff. I don't know. It's just like, I mean, Gretchen's just like opened this whole fucking door up. Like, I like this episode, and now I'm just like, man, it really was clunky. Like, there was so much. This is the worst paced episode, I will say. I mean, I'm tired like 24/7. But usually Westworld can keep me awake. Surprisingly, I was kind of dozing off. I was like, man, I'm super tired. This is like, it just felt not paced right. And I think the more I've talked about, this is my least favorite episode of the season now, even though I really liked it still. And I'm just hoping it can, like, if I watch next week's episode, like, I'm like, okay, this pendulum episode makes sense for why it was the way it was and why they threw all that stuff in. And it could have been better, but I accept it for what it is. I hope it ends good. I
think we all do.
Like, because if it doesn't, then it kind of just negates why should I be excited for season 4.
Right. Well, and here's the things. Gretchen, we'll start with you. As a penultimate episode, did this episode do everything it needed to do to set up a solid finale? Obviously, there's threads that are going to be loose. This thing is continuing on for 3 more seasons, supposedly, according to the deal that was struck. But in terms of like doing everything a penultimate episode should in an HBO series, did it succeed?
I guess if you just want to look at it from the point of view of like what happens right in the final moments and does that set it up, I would say yes. I mean, you see Caleb running off. He has the USB drive. You see Dolores and Maeve, our 2 strongest players, are knocked out. And then as of right now, we don't know what Sirach is doing. So it does have that opportunity to like I do want to tune in, obviously, for the last episode to see how that all works out and to see how Caleb is really the so-called pass pawn, which is, like the pawn that's like threatening to become the queen in chess. So like that whole reference is interesting and I want to see where it goes. But the whole road to get there was messy. But if you're just looking at like, did they set up something interesting? Technically, yes.
Yeah. I think that's a fair examination of it. Zach, how about you?
I don't know. I'm kind of like, I was reading this, like, as she was talking, I was reading this article. It's like, what are the major questions kind of heading into the next episode? And the big things is like, what other host could Sirach bring to the table, especially as surprise? Do you guys think this season is less surprising than last one or season 1? Like,
Yeah.
I don't think there's been. I think the
yeah.
biggest twist is Mother of Exile still, but that's really it. If you know what I mean, like, there's not
Yeah.
one where I'm like, holy shit. But another question is, when will William do something useful for once? You know, and then even the last thing is, what happens when an unstoppable force meets an immovable object? You know, at the same, there's just, I'm just waiting, like, for this season to do something. And I'm really hoping that next week can open those doors up and like really be like, all right, because I'm hoping the showdown between Maeve and Dolores is done after next episode. Like, I'm hoping that whole stuff is done. I'm hoping Caleb is, I mean, he's gonna be alive. It's whatever. No one ever dies in the show, but I'm hoping next season or next episode kind of pushes, like, season 4 is going to go in this direction, and I hope it's more of the host versus humanity at that point.
Yeah, for sure.
Because what is the government doing? What the fuck is the government doing around the world?
It feels like the government doesn't exist at this point. It feels like Sirach is the government.
It really must be, because people were rioting. Like, where's the police? Where's the government? You know, so they got to do something with that.
Yeah. Before we kind of close out, there is something that people are asking about. Whoops, I put the wrong one up there. People are asking, is Caleb the Man in Black, and how do they sum this up in one episode? So basically, what Third Eye Dreamer is referring to here is the fact that William's patient number is supposedly the same as Caleb's ID number. Whether or not that has any correlation as to the identity of the two people remains to be seen. You know, maybe they'll pull something where, like, I don't know, Caleb was kind of cloned from the blood of William. I don't know. I just, that feels a little weird to me. But
that just feels like another sort of twist to happen. It's like, why? They haven't, you know, if they would have said, hey, there's been cloning involved earlier in the season, maybe. But they haven't hinted at that at all.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely don't think he's William or the Man in Black. I think their ID numbers are probably the same because they went through the same thing. Like, they were, they probably gave all of the outliers like the same number or an iteration of that number.
Yeah.
And like, if they were deceased, then so be it. And like, I don't know that, like, I'm not entirely sure why they would be the same, but like, it's definitely something along those lines. You know what I'm saying? I don't know, Gretchen, what do you think?
I think it would finally make the reason for why William's just floating around this season. You know, it would make a lot more sense, because then it would finally tie back into everything. If he was somehow, I don't know, maybe he was like the original building block for this entire thing, this entire program of reprogramming the outliers, because he's obviously a humongous outlier. He's a sociopath, and really his technology is what kickstarted Delos and what caused the host to run there. And, you know, him building, Caleb being used to build off of William's DNA. I don't know. I will say, if the season ends and we find out there's two copies of William, I'm going to be pissed, because I cannot stand one William, and two is going to be too much for me.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah. I think I've frozen. I don't know if that's 100%.
Yeah, you're frozen.
Yeah,
like the perfect thing possible.
I know, it's like, woo, like, you know, so I don't even know why that's the case here, but I guess I'll just be frozen. Jacoby Mans is saying that there's no government. It's all another level of the simulation. Do you think this is another simulation, guys?
It's a simulation. I feel like I will be fucking pissed if it's a simulation. I can't. It looks like he lagged out. Would you be pissed if it's a simulation? I feel like it would just be a cop out.
Yeah, I know a lot of people want to see, like, what they're all calling like future world. Like, essentially this city is just another Westworld that's actually been built to look like a cool, fancy, you know, new Singapore. But it would just be such a cop out. I feel like I know that.
But then they've gone to like LA and stuff like that. So then that adds into it. I mean, I think it'd be a cop out. Griffin, do you think it'd be a cop out if they did the simulation thing?
Yeah, I mean, I've been saying that from the beginning of the season, when that theory started floating around. I just feel like it's
the season was for nothing. The season was for nothing then. You know, you know what I mean? Now, if they do, I mean, we could be saying that right now, and then they do it in some spectacular way that we're like, that was really cool that they did that. I hate that idea, but it worked. And
Yeah.
Maybe. And there's been hints. I mean, we saw, what was it, when Charlotte was walking past, someone was drawing the maze in spray paint.
Yeah.
Why? You know?
Yeah.
And that they're known for those visual cues. So
Yeah.
And I agree with why people feel that way too, because everything in this world feels so thinly drawn. Like, you're right. Like, where is the government when all these people are fighting, and Dolores and, you know, Maeve are just shooting out into crowds and stuff? And
what if it is like a VR type thing? And which character do you think it would be in their mind? Would it be William?
I don't even think it'd be any of. I just no. I mean, I don't think it'd be any of their minds. It would just be
what
like
if
another
season 4
level,
is just a total what if season 4 in a sense is kind of like a total reset, and it changes? So there's this, and there's a way they could do it. There's a film that I saw at Sundance this year called Black Bear, which has Aubrey Plaza in it, and the film in a sense is 2 hours, but 2 different stories with the same actors, but completely told in a different way. And it's the exact same story for both things, same metaphor, same everything, but told like so season 2, or not season 2, the second half of the movie shifts everything, and each character, so like Aubrey Plaza plays this character instead, this character plays this character instead, and then it goes back. And there's a way that Westworld could actually really do that and be really unique. Just like how that movie did, because I wasn't loving the movie until it actually did that. So maybe they'll do something like that, but it's a risk. It's a risk. You could lose a lot of people. You could lose a lot of viewership on that.
Yeah, I think that even might be a little too much for me. I think we'll end on this comment right here from Jay, which is saying, I think people took one line with the word simulation and just ran with it. It's a simulation in the fact that their lives are controlled by AI. That's how I've taken it. I think that's the way the writers are taking it. Listen, the show has done some crazy things, but I think even like Jonathan Nolan and Lisa Joy understand that it's better to approach the themes from a metaphorical standpoint, from a theological standpoint, than from like literally showing it. Like, they're smart enough writers, and they've done a good job thus far. So,
do you think the show has a happy ending? Like, by the series finale, do you think the show has a happy ending?
It depends on the character. It
depends which characters survive, I guess. Yeah. So
I don't know, Gretchen, what do you think?
I at this point don't know what happiness is for everyone. Like, I don't know what Dolores' idea of happiness is. Like, it sounds like she just wants to destroy all humans and then populate that earth with the hosts, but obviously that wouldn't be a happy ending for literally any of us. But like for Maeve, her happy ending would be with being with her daughter again, even though it's in a literal endless simulation world. So it would be nice to see different endings for different characters, and they at least get some piece of their pie, but I honestly don't know if I can see Westworld ending with Dolores alive.
No, I don't think so. And I think that's the risk they need to start taking, is killing off a character and leaving them dead. And I think that's the big piece. Like Hector, I don't think's ever coming back. I think Hector's gone. I think Teddy's never coming back either. Sadly, but Teddy's never coming back either. Yeah. But in the sense of like, I mean, the biggest character to die is Anthony Hopkins' character. And he's only been dead for this season so far. For all we know, he shows up next episode. But I look at this and I'm just like, I think this season needs to end on a big character dying. Like a major piece of the puzzle, and finally start thinning out. Because that's something I love about Game of Thrones. I mean, season 1 through 5, they were killing people off left and right. This season, or this show, it just feels a little safe in that regards, where you are right. I don't see Dolores living till the end. And even then, when her plan's done, where else does her character go? There's nowhere else where I could see Maeve maybe still expanding a little bit more, where I could still see Caleb having a lot more to do in this world. But like William's done. I could even see Bernard having stuff to do. Stubbs doesn't need to be there anymore. I love Hemsworth, but like, don't need him in there,
Yeah, he's really kind of pointless.
And Charlotte Hale's character now is probably more intriguing than it's ever been.
Right.
She is hands down the best character in the show right now. Like I absolutely love what they've done with her arc this season, which I know we talked a lot about that last week, but my God, if Tessa Thompson does not get an Emmy nomination, there's something seriously wrong here. But yeah, so that's going to do it, guys, for this recap or review. I guess, closing thoughts here from both of you, just, final 2 cents on this particular episode. Gretchen, let's start with you.
Oh God, my one cent is I want William to die at the end of the finale, and then my faith in the show will be renewed. That's it.
There you go. Yeah, Zach, how about you?
For me, I need something big. I need something really big to happen next episode. Something that like fucking blows my socks off and goes, damn, I cannot wait till 2022, 2023, whenever we get the next season, because yeah, I need it. I mean, I've loved the season so far, but Westworld really comes down to that finale. I really think that's what it really means. Like season one, really liked the show, but the finale, really loved it. Season two comes down to that finale, loved it. So give me this finale, man. Just give me this good finale and leave it open to where like I want to come back for a season 4.
Yeah, for sure. Well, guys, the most important thing is, what do you all think? Obviously, a lot of you have been chiming on in the chat, so thank you very much if you've watched this live. We really appreciated your commentary. If you were watching this on the replay, be sure to let us know your thoughts and opinions on tonight's episode 7, down in the comments section below. Thank you to my 2 guests for joining me. Miss Gretchen Smale, where can everyone find you?
I'm on Twitter at Gretchen_Smale, and you can also see my writing on Bustle, IGN, Nerdist, Guardian, round on the internet.
All over the place. It's great. Good stuff. Zach, where can everyone find you?
You guys can find me on YouTube at Zach Pope, or pretty much anywhere on the internet. Just type that in. You'll find me all over there. Thank you for having me again. It was nice meeting you, Gretchen, talking Westworld, making me hate this episode. So thank you.
The party's next to Nancy. I'm sorry.
Hey, you put a different perspective, which is nice, because if it was just me and Griffin talking this episode, we would have been not as gotten to the nitpicky realm, which I think helped further out this episode a bit.
Yeah, because I love it.
Yeah,
you and Sharonda literally balance us. You and Sharonda balance us out.
It's perfect. I know. That's why I love having you guys on. But anyways, guys, be sure to subscribe to the Film Speak channel for more recap episodes of Westworld, along with movie reviews, interviews, a whole lot of great film content over there. So if you're interested in that, you're definitely in the right place, and hit that subscribe button. You can also like Film Speak on Facebook, follow us on Twitter simply by searching Film Speak. And lastly, if you like me specifically and you like what I have to say, you can give me a follow on Twitter at Griff Schiller. All right, that's going to do it for this recap and review of Westworld Season 3, Episode 7, and we'll catch you next week. Take care.